Hi, I'm Dr. Larry Malerba. Welcome back to the All Things Homeopathy channel. Today's episode is about homeopathic remedies and the law. The regulatory and legal status of homeopathic remedies in the United States is a subject that is poorly understood by many. It goes without saying that most legislators are completely unaware of the various issues surrounding homeopathic products and homeopathic practitioners. Fortunately, Diane Miller is an attorney who has dedicated her career to consumer rights and issues of health freedom as it pertains to alternative forms of medicine. And in today's presentation, she does a remarkable job of clarifying for us the present day regulatory status of homeopathic remedies. I think you'll find that she's done a wonderful job of taking a complex topic and making it a lot easier to understand. But before we begin, allow me to give you a little background on Diane Miller. In the year 2000, Diane Miller was a co-founder of the National Health Freedom Coalition. Today, she serves as the Director of Legal and Public Policy for the NHFC and its sister lobbying organization, National Health Freedom Action. Together, these organizations have worked to create exemptions for holistic health practitioners in 35 different states. They've also successfully helped to establish laws in 11 states to protect the practice of complementary and alternative health. Now, National Health Freedom Action's vision is to change federal law to ensure that homeopathic remedies are forever recognized as generally regarded as safe, similar to the presumption of safety given to foods, instead of being legally presumed to be dangerous. Needless to say, Diane Miller's work has been invaluable. I strongly urge that you support her and her organizations and the rapidly expanding health freedom movement. Listen now to Attorney Diane Miller explain the current law as it pertains to homeopathy and her vision for the future regarding access to homeopathic remedies. Please enjoy, and I hope that you'll learn as much as I did.
Hello. Today I'm here to talk to you about homeopathic remedies. And I'm sure a lot of you have been wondering what is going on because the emails are going out saying they are under threat. My name is Diane Miller. I'm an attorney with National Health Freedom Action and National Health Freedom Coalition. And I would love to explain to you what is going on with them in the legal process and hopefully add some clarification and some vision for the future of homeopathic remedies so that we can all have access to them forever. So here today, I have developed a PowerPoint to explain to you the laws regarding homeopathic remedies and to tell you where things are at. So if you're up for some deep dive into homeopathic remedy law, this is what this PowerPoint is about. So let me share my screen and we'll get started. So I am an attorney with National Health Freedom Coalition and Action, and these are two organizations that really work to protect access for consumers to anything they want in the healing process. And that's why homeopathy is so important to them. There are so many consumers using homeopathic practitioners and homeopathic remedies. And you can get a hold of us at our website, nationalhealthfreedom.org and nationalhealthfreedomaction.org if you have questions or if you want to subscribe to our alerts and newsletters. First of all, there are two ways to look at homeopathy. The state law, which regulates homeopathic occupations, and that's not the focus of this total presentation today, but the homeopathic occupations are regulated by states individually and whether the practitioners can practice. And then the federal law is the law that is the commerce law that really works with manufacturing, selling, marketing, health claims on homeopathic remedies themselves. So let's just take a very brief moment to talk about the state law for practicing homeopathy. It's an occupation. So if you are helping someone with a health problem, you're considered helping in an occupation. And so state laws always look to those laws to see if there is an occupation that should be regulated or if it should stay in the public domain. I learned about this law because I live in Minnesota, and the definition of the practice of medicine is very broad. It says anyone who offers or undertakes to prevent or to diagnose, correct, or treat by any means, methods, devices, or instrumentalities any disease, illness, pain, wound, fracture, infirmity, deformity, or defect of any person is actually considered legally to be practicing medicine. And I learned about this because I was on a case where a farmer who was curing people with the raw milk from his farm had cured a congressman, and he was charged with practicing medicine without a license. And I thought, what in the world? How could a farmer be charged with practicing medicine? And then I found this law, and we went forward. But the jury in the case didn't want to convict this farmer because they thought, well, even a grandmother giving out chicken noodle soup would be considered a criminal under this law. So there were 2 hung juries, and then they withdrew all the charges. But after that, I thought, we need to change this law. We need to have some kind of an exemption to this law for regular healers. So the freedom solution that we came up with in Minnesota was the safe harbor law, the practitioner exemption law. And we really didn't change the definition of practice medicine because we want doctors to be able to do whatever they want. But we did create an exemption to the Medical Practice Act. And here are the things that are now protected in Minnesota, including but not limited to acupressure, anthroposophy, aromatherapy, Ayurveda, cranial sacral, on and on, to homeopathy and herbalism, and traditional naturopathy. So we have a good climate in Minnesota for the healers that are practicing non-invasive forms of healing. So that topic of the practitioners is a topic all of its own, and we have worked in 35 states now to try and help create exemptions for practitioners. And there are now 11 states that have exemptions for the unlicensed practice of complementary and alternative healthcare. And we have a whole project and attorneys working on that to help states and to help groups in states get homeopathic practitioners legal. So now we're going to start with the homeopathic remedy conversation. Are you ready? So when you talk about a remedy and what are the laws around it, you ask yourself, are you making or selling remedies or making health claims that are not approved drug claims about remedies? So this is federal commerce law. So homeopathic remedies, people ask, are they regulated as drugs or are they regulated as food because they're so diluted? Well, they are regulated as drugs. There are different federal regulation laws to look at. There's the federal statutes passed by Congress. There's administrative rules from the agencies of the FDA, and there's guidance documents by the FDA just to let people know what they think about things. So we'll start out with the federal statutes. Why are they regulated as drugs? So here's the definition of drug. And it says an article recognized in the official United States Pharmacopoeia or official homeopathic pharmacopoeia of the United States or official national formulary or any supplement to any of them. So right off the bat, they are regulated as drugs. Excuse me. So there, in the definition of drug, there was a lot of contention in the 1960s and 70s because the part B and C of that definition says an article intended for the use of diagnosis, cure, mitigation, treatment, or prevention of disease. or an article intended to affect the structure or function of the body. So they're actually defining what is a drug by the intention of use. And that created a big problem because there were people using food substances for healing, and they were getting shut down for cherry juice, or, water could be water if you were using it to heal. So in 1994, the Dietary Supplement Act was passed. It was initiated by a groundswell of consumers, and the National Health Federation led the charge. And they really worked hard to get the three little words, which I have on my screen, articles other than food intended to affect the structure function. So they pulled food out of the definition of drug, and then they defined dietary supplements as food. So we have dietary supplements in the United States that are considered and regulated as foods. They have the presumption of safety, whereas a drug has the presumption of danger. So for a drug, since homeopathic remedies are regulated as drugs, they have two pathways to go on the market. The first one is the drug application process, which is a multi-million-dollar process of applying as a new drug and then doing clinical trials and making sure that they are safe and effective for what they are supposed to be used for. The second way to go to the market is by the over-the-counter drug review. So in the 1960s, there was a delegation of authority to the FDA to review all of the over-the-counter drugs and to see if they were safe for being on the market. There were thousands of drugs on the market already, and their job was to review all of these over-the-counter drugs to see if they were safe to be on the market. If they weren't safe, they were pulled off the market. They were not prescription drugs. So what happened then was that in 1972, they made an official rule, and it said over-the-counter human drugs, which are generally recognized as safe and effective and not misbranded. What does it take to get into that category? So they were going through and checking everybody. However, in that same rule, there was a paragraph put in that rule, and it said, the American Institute of Homeopathy requested that homeopathic medicines be excluded from the OTC review. Because of the uniqueness of homeopathic medicine, the commissioner has decided to exclude homeopathic drugs from this OTC drug review and to review them at a separate category at a later time after the present OTC drug review is complete. So there we have homeopathic remedies just sitting there waiting for their review. Well, the review took 40 years. I mean, FDA was going through one by one groups of over-the-counter drugs to review them, and they did not get to the homeopathic remedies until a few years ago. In 2015, 16, 17, they started to ask. So they have not had an over-the-counter drug review. So they were kind of in limbo, like, can you shut me down for being a new drug? So this is what the FDA has always said. Under the Federal Drug and Cosmetic Act, homeopathic products are subject to the same requirements related to approval, adulteration, and misbranding of other drugs. There are currently no homeopathic products approved by FDA. So that's even still on their website in September 2020. So because of this being in limbo and having people investigated for being a new drug without any danger going on, in 1988, the homeopathic community and the FDA were discussing what to do, and the FDA made a policy guide for homeopathic remedies. And this policy guide is not a statute. It's not a law out of the federal Congress. It's not an administrative rule out of the agency, which requires public input. It's simply a policy guide saying, we're not going to go after you if you abide by this policy guide. We're just going to turn our head the other way. So compliance policy guides are adopted sometimes when the agency does not go through the full official rulemaking process. So they created this policy guide, 400, and they said these are the conditions under which homeopathic drugs may be marketed. And that's basically what the homeopathic manufacturers and community followed over the years. Over the years, though, technology changing and good manufacturing practices were challenged and developed more intensely. So there was a lot of change going on in the homeopathic community of manufacturers since 1988, but they did have this 400 to protect them to some extent, but they were still considered unapproved. So in 2017, the FDA proposed a new policy compliance guide for homeopathic products. They took input from consumers about this before they put it out, and they proposed this new draft policy compliance guide, and they recommended repealing the 400. But the new policy compliance guide was not like the old one. It wasn't like recognizing homeopathic remedies that are highly diluted as safe. It was more about the homeopathic remedies are dangerous. We have to do risk assessments on these remedies and really treating them more like a risk-benefit drug analysis. And so the homeopathic community was up in arms going, oh my goodness, we're losing our 1988 protection. So a lot of activity happened during that time. In 2019, after much input from the consumer community and the manufacturing community, the FDA did a new draft guidance. So they did a second draft and they put out the new draft guidance. But one of the things they did was they repealed 400 before they had a final draft guidance. They just had a new draft guidance, but they repealed 400, and that was a very big blow to the homeopathic community because now they had no protection. 400 was gone, and they didn't have a new guidance document that they all agreed on. So that is why there's been so many emails going around saying what to do. And at first we said, don't repeal 400, but we did not want the FDA, our organization did not want the FDA to go into rulemaking process because we figured that their rulemaking language would be very much like their draft guidance for risk assessment, and we didn't want that to happen. So we said, let's just change the law like they did with the dietary supplements. In 2020, and we were working on drafting a model homeopathic law, the FDA put out a new reformed OTC review procedure. And we were thinking, oh, it was in the 2020 CARES Act. And we thought, oh, this might really exempt the homeopathic practitioners. It says OTC monograph drugs may be marketed without an approved drug application under certain circumstances. But if you can believe this, the 2020 CARES Act once again excluded homeopathic drugs. It said nothing in this act shall apply to any non-prescription drug, which was excluded by the FDA from the over-the-counter drug review in 1972. So here we go. They were exempted again, so they had no protection once again. So in 2022, much to many people's dismay, the FDA finally put out a new homeopathic guidance finalized. And it was worse than the first draft. And it was very much risk-based assessment. It's called Homeopathic Drug Products Guidance for FDA staff and industry. It is a policy guideline. It is not an official agency rule. It is not a congressional statute. It is a policy guideline. So we were still thinking, we need to change the law. Okay, then since 2022, there's a lot of questions. Is FDA going to remove homeopathic products from the market immediately? So from their website, June 18th, 2022, it says the FDA is prioritizing specific categories of drugs, such as those intended for populations at greater risk for adverse reactions. There are currently no FDA-approved products labeled as homeopathic. And I just want to make a statement here about, first of all, the FDA perceives them as risky, like they've got dangerous things in them. They'll hurt populations like pregnant women, and that's what they say. But on the other hand, they say that they're worthless, they're misbranded because they have nothing in them. And you can't have that argument both ways. You either think they're highly diluted and they're not dangerous, or you think that they're dangerous and they have something very toxic and they're going to hurt people. You can't have it both ways. And so we know that they're highly diluted substances, with many of those substances not even having a molecule in them per mole. And so the dilution of that substance makes them have less substance in them than the regular environment around them or any of the environmental standards. They are highly diluted substances, and they are considered by the homeopathic community is generally regarded as safe because they're energetic. And if you're an energetic, person, or you're a person that works with energy, you know that some energetic substances can impact people in different ways, and that's the power of homeopathy. So it's a very different paradigm than a material substance. And so the FDA is looking at it as a material substance, but they have a bias against it because it's so highly diluted and it's confusing. This final guidance in 2022 said FDA has identified certain categories of homeopathic drug markets marketed without the required FDA approval as potentially posing higher risk to public health. And how they're going to say that they're higher risk to public health when they're so highly diluted is beyond me. I don't know how they're going to prove that, but they also say FDA generally applies a risk-based enforcement strategy to drugs. For example, FDA has generally employed a risk-based enforcement approach with respect to marketed, unapproved drugs. Now, let's just talk about risk-based assessment. So, and effectiveness. When you take a drug, a regular pharmaceutical drug, you're doing an assessment of, that the drug could be dangerous, and you have a disease. So you want to know if the drug's going to be effective, because you're balancing the drug risks with getting well and whether it's effective. So you're willing to do some risky things in order to get the benefit of the drug. That is not true with homeopathy because it's highly diluted and it doesn't have any risks. So in a drug analysis, they always say the manufacturer has to prove it's safe for the disease that it's going in, but the safety is not because it doesn't have any side effects, it's just that the benefit outweighs the risk. For food, there's a presumption of safety, so you don't have to prove that an apple is safe and effective for your immune system before you eat it. It's considered safe, and they can only take apples off the market that are dangerous. So food has a very different legal position than the drug assessment. And our opinion is that the homeopathic remedies, because of their highly diluted state, should be considered a presumption of safety and not be taken off the market because pregnant women are using them. So here's the toxic substance warning that is in the FDA final documents for homeopathic remedies. Products with reports of injury that after evaluation raise potential safety concerns. And no one's ever been hurt by a homeopathic remedy. It's kind of like the same thing with food. the track record of homeopathic remedies is very much like food. It's not like drugs. Products that contain or purport to contain ingredients associated with potentially significant safety concerns. So, for example, many homeopathic remedies are made from substances that you normally would not eat. So you might have a plant or a mineral that is highly diluted, so it's an energetic substance. But so is that a reason to take it off the market because it has been made from a mineral or plant that otherwise you would not eat? No, it's highly diluted. It's got less in it than the actual environment. So they're treating homeopathic remedies as drugs, like pharmaceutical drugs, and they're not acknowledging the dilution process. So in 2023, Senate Appropriations Committee report came out in June 2023, and it showed that somebody's been talking to Congress about homeopathic remedies. In this Senate Appropriations report, it said the following: homeopathy. The committee understands the importance of homeopathic medicine for millions of users. Consumers' access and safety to these products are best ensured by implementing a legal pathway that includes homeopathic specific standards for the regulation of these medicines. And it also acknowledged that the illegally marketed has created confusion both for homeopathic community and enforcement officials. So that was a good sign that somebody's talking about it. But when we read it, we thought, uh-oh, they're going to start making homeopathic specific standards for regulation of these medicines. And those standards, in our opinion, coming from the FDA, would be more like drug standards. And that would be not like a food standard. So we were very concerned. And our constant opinion is that we need to change the law. So homeopathic remedies made with good homeopathic manufacturing practices should have the legal presumption of being generally recognized as safe, just like foods, based on their substantial dilution. That is our position, and that's what we're working on to draft that law. So then, just recently this year, an amendment came on to the appropriations bill. So we called the organization that was working on this amendment. The amendment says, none of the funds made available by this act may be used to take an enforcement action solely on the basis that a homeopathic drug is a new drug. Well, that was a great step forward. It doesn't change the law like we would like, but it at least says somebody's working with Congress to bring this to their attention, and that would be great if that would be passed. So we are in touch with the Americans for Homeopathic Choice that we're initiating amendments to appropriations, and our organization, National Health Freedom Action, is sharing our draft language for a long-term solution with anybody who is interested. We do not have a lobbyist in Washington at this time, but we would love to move to change the law so that homeopathic remedies are regulated as generally regarded as safe. So our position is the burden of proof needs to be on the government to show harm by clear and convincing evidence before restricting a product similar to the burden of proof for dietary supplements and products that are generally regarded as safe. So our long-term solution is changing the law, and we want to protect homeopathic remedies, and we want to protect homeopathic practitioners so that we can all have access to them as long as we want. So thank you so much for your attention today. Our organization is National Health Freedom Coalition and National Health Freedom Action, and I hope this has been a helpful review of the homeopathic situation, and I hope you get involved to protect homeopathy. Thank you so much today.